Praise the Lord. I bring greetings to everyone listening to me, especially our sons and daughters of FCN Western Zone in UK. Following the September Conference 2022, the emergence, the Lord laid some issues on my heart to share with you, and this is my attempt to do so. Special thanks to Pastor Isaiah and Pastor Daniel for helping me with it, and to mommy too. This is what I felt the Lord will help me share with you, to give you a perspective of maybe some of the things you may be seeing in this land, to give you a prophetic insight to the occurrences that may be going on around you, and to help you to have an insight to why you are here, maybe, and maybe some other things that the Lord will speak to you. My prayer is that the Lord Himself will speak to you. My prayer is that the Lord Himself will bring you into full fulfillment of His plan for you and for me and for all of us, for bringing us to this land. This message may be more to my brethren, my students, my sons and daughters, much more than maybe to any other person. But as many as may be interested to listen, I ask that the Lord Himself will speak to you. What is this about? It's about understanding why God brought us to the UK and helping everyone that is involved in this prophetic move of God that brought some of us, several of us, to this land, to understand what is God doing. I will start from Matthew chapter 13. In Matthew chapter 13 was a parable of the sower. And from verse 3, Bible says, "And he spake many things unto them in parables, saying, Behold, a sower went forth to sow. And when he sowed, some seed fell by the wayside, and the fowls came and devoured them. Some fell on stony places where they had not much earth, and forthwith they sprung up, because they had no deepness of the earth. And when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. And some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprung up and choked them. But others fell on good ground, and brought forth fruit, some 100-fold, some 60-fold, some 30-fold. Who has ear to hear, let him hear." One of the prophetic moves of the end time of God is an agenda of God of visiting the land that has not had enough impact of the gospel by other land that has had overload of it. Let me come again. The Lord trying to balance nations that are lacking from nations that are overloaded. And if you understand the principle of scriptures a little bit, in Jeremiah 31 verse 27, Bible spoke about the Lord saying, He said, there will come a time, says the Lord, that I will sow the house of Israel and the house of Judah with the seed of man. Which means, in the end time agenda of God, sowing seed is the idea, and God is planning to sow seed of man, seed of men, to lands that are deficient of men. And what type of seed is God trying to sow? The Lord is picking seeds from nations like Nigeria that has produced excessive seed. An average church in Nigeria has produced young people that can replicate the calling of their general overseer several times over. And yet they are in the church serving, being trained. And you can get that same picture in almost every corner of a country like Nigeria. At least I know Nigeria very well. And if you go to Ghana, you will see the same thing. Go to South Africa, you may see similar thing. God, going from such country, decided to harvest some of the overripe seeds and bring them to a land like Europe, where their own land has not been able to germinate enough seed that can overwhelm their land with the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ. And that was what the first part of this, the Sower teaching, is all about. And I ended that first part telling you about this agenda of God of moving children, seeds, young men, young generation from African countries and bringing them to be planted in countries like Europe is an end time agenda of God. So whatever was your reason for leaving your country, there will always be a reason to move you. To move Saul, they arranged for an animal to be missing. To move David, they made his own arrangements too. To move Joseph, all he needed was his father to send him on an errand, and for his brother to be hungry, Joseph must arrive to Egypt. So regardless of your reason for leaving the country, behind it is a divine agenda of God looking to plant nations that are dry from seeds, looking to replant them, to revitalize them from nation that has overflow. And believe me, I know Nigeria has overflow. Overflow of young men that knows the call of God. Overflow of young men that know when God is speaking. Overflow of young men that have been overtaught, overload, overimpart, over-receive, over-understand, over-convented. They have been to every convention. They have received everything overflow. Nigeria has them in loads. And it is time for God to pick from that harvest before it started spoiling again and plant them to this side. And let me say this again. When harvest is overload and the harvest is becoming too much and there was no use for it, that's when you will see duplication of ministry. That's when you see comparing yourself with your self dimension. That's when you begin to see stealing from you to me dimension. That's when you begin to see bite me, I bite you dimension. It's a sign that is overflow. Everything there is overflow. That's when you begin to see cultism ministry. That's when you begin to see I'm better than you, we are better than you ministry. And God needed to harvest that and take it to nations that were hungry. Number 2 or number 3. I needed to also say this to you, that God has done this type of movement of harvest. At least the one that I can count, this will be either the third session and the one that I say I monitored. This will be the third time I will see this movement in the heavens. That I saw the hand of God over Africa, moving men into lands that were hungry. And each time that hand moved across the sky like that, vital men, quality men, church leaders, mentors, fathers, busy ministers, busy young men, hungry young men moved. I never know how I will see such again. But yet, it's happening again. That hand moved in the sky, moved from Africa and load young men into nations that were hungry for reality of the gospel. So, wherever you have found yourself, you are in that end time program of God. And that brings me to this session 2 that you are watching, explaining the hands that moved in the sky. That hand is the hand of the sower. And I start again to explain to you the sower. That the sower have gone to Africa to harvest souls, to harvest young men into nations that are very hungry. And in that chapter 13 of Matthew, Bible begin to explain that the sower, in some versions, as I said in part 1, some versions said, and as he sowed, as he scattered, some seed scattered. As he sowed, some seed scattered. And he gave me a picture of when the sower put quantity of seed in his hand, and the seed, as he moved the hand over fertile land, the seed began to drop from his fingers. So as he moved the hand like that, seed scattered. It's a principle of sowing. Seed sometimes don't overlay each other so that they can spread properly. And you will see the same pattern in the movement of young men into nations, including Canada. The Lord is sowing lands, is sowing Europe with seeds of men, harvested from a farm that has overload of them. And I can assure you, the more the Lord is harvesting from Africa, from the churches of Africa, from ministry from Africa, from organizations like FCM from Africa, the more Africa is reproduced. Africa can have less of them. So have no fear. And I come to when they are sold. And I'll read Matthew 13 now, verse 31. Matthew 13, I read from verse 31. He said, another parable put he forth unto them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like a grain of mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field, which indeed is the least of all the seeds. But when it is grown, it is the greatest among herbs, and becometh a tree, so that the birds of the air come and lodge in the branches thereof. Now, when God brings this seed from Africa, from wherever they are coming from, and he started planting them into these nations, one of the picture this seed are having is that they look like small seed. They look like unassuming seed. They look very small. Most of them are starting from the beginning, starting from the scratch, starting empty. Some of them are big ministers, big boys, big career officers from their various country. But when they get to Europe, they start very small, like a mustard seed. They lose all their sizes into a small size, like a mustard seed, very small. But because the Lord has planted them into this land, I've come to let them know that there's a capacity in this land that will sponsor their growth to be big again. So I've come to first of all tell them that no matter how much size you lose to arrive on this land, because you have been planted by the Lord, you have capacity to overgrow your size that you once had where you are coming from. In fact, the Lord said it is the greatest among herbs. That means when they will compare you with what is on ground here, you will see that you will be the greatest among other trees that have been planted. Because I can tell you, trees are different from herbs. Say, becometh a tree that birds of the air begin to love. That means you begin to have impact in the environment, in the area, in the society where God has planted you. Now, one of my initial concerns was, God, we have heard stories of seed after being planted, died. I'm still going to discuss that now. And I was asking the Lord for, will there be a permission for me to start a church to bring all of them together and nurture them? And the Lord said I should not worry, that for every seed that was scattered, their provision will be where they are scattered to. That He will provide for them there. That in case they don't get where they can be nurtured easily, they should search for it, they will get. That we should not be bothered about that. That He will take care of every seed in every land they have been scattered to. That there may not be need for what I was worried about. And that's a major relief, because our generation must not fail the Lord by dying off. We can't afford to die off. So, coming to this session of what happened when a man is sold on a field.